So you're watching a tennis match. You see the two athletes, the net, the ball. But the most important character on that court, the real MVP, the thing that dictates literally everything from strategy to injuries, is the ground right under their feet. Because in tennis, the surface isn't just a stage, it completely changes the entire game. So you have to ask, right? How is that even possible? How can a patch of grass, a court of clay, and a slab of asphalt create three fundamentally different versions of the exact same sport? Well, the answer, and this is where it gets cool, is all down to the physics of a collision that lasts less than the blink of an eye. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, first up, let's just look at the cold, hard data. At the French Open, which is played on that slow red clay, the average rally is this grueling back-and-forth marathon of about 6 shots. But then you go to Wimbledon on that slick green grass, and it's a lightning-fast sprint, averaging just 3 shots. The game is literally twice as long on one surface. To understand why, we've got to zoom way, way in. We need to get right down to the microscopic level, that tiny, tiny moment the ball actually makes contact with the ground. This is where the court basically stamps its personality onto the ball. Get this, everything, and I mean everything, is decided in about 5,000ths of a second. It's almost instantaneous. And in that tiny moment, there's a war being waged between two key physical forces that decide exactly what that ball is going to do next: bounce and friction. First up, you've got something physicists call the coefficient of restitution, or COR for short. The easiest way to think about this, it's the bounciness factor. A surface with a high COR is like a tiny trampoline. It fires a ton of energy right back into the ball, giving you a really high, lively bounce. And the second big one is the coefficient of friction, or COF. This is the grip factor. A surface with high friction literally grabs onto the fuzzy felt of the tennis ball. It slows the ball's forward motion and can really exaggerate the spin. A low friction surface, on the other hand, lets it just kind of skid right through. So picture this, all in those 5 milliseconds. 1, the ball smacks the ground and squishes like a pancake. 2, the court's friction either grabs it hard or lets it slide. And 3, the surface's bounciness kicks in, deciding how high and fast it rockets back up. Every single surface does this in its own unique way. All right, so now that we have those two key ideas, bounciness and grip, we can finally break down the unique personality of each of the 3 main court types. And this is where it gets really interesting, how these two things play off each other. A hard court has high friction and a high bounce, which creates a fast but very true and predictable game. Then you've got clay. It has crazy high friction. That gritty surface just bites the ball, but a low bounce, which actually absorbs energy and slows the whole game right down. And then there's grass. It's got low friction and a very low bounce, which makes the ball skid and stay low to the ground, creating that super fast pace players have to deal with. But hold on a second. You might be thinking, how can grass be the fastest surface if it has lower friction than a hard court? That seems backwards, right? Well, this chart here shows the secret. The ball actually loses more of its horizontal speed on grass than it does on a hard court. The reason it feels so much faster is because of that incredibly low bounce. The ball doesn't waste time going up, it just shoots forward, skidding at a super low angle and giving the other player a split second less time to react. It's all about perception. And you can see this effect so clearly in how the players themselves have to move. On a hard court, that high friction means their shoes just lock into the surface. It forces these violent, abrupt stops and pivots. But on clay, that loose top layer of crushed brick is like a natural braking system. It lets players do that iconic, graceful slide into the ball, which actually saves their joints a ton of wear and tear. All right, let's zoom back out. We've geeked out on the physics. Now let's look at how those tiny 5-millisecond collisions create these huge ripple effects that define tactics, careers, and even the health of the players. This is really where the science meets the art of the game. The surface itself basically tells you how to win. On clay, with its slow pace and high bounce, you get time. So it's all about patience, hitting with heavy topspin, and having incredible endurance. Grass is the total opposite. That fast, low skid rewards a massive, flat serve and rushing to the net to end the point before it even really begins. And hard courts, they're kind of the middle ground, rewarding powerful, aggressive players who can hit big from all over the court. And if you want a perfect example, just look at the stats on aces. Those are the unreturnable serves. At Wimbledon on grass, they're everywhere. It's a huge part of the game. But at the French Open, that gritty clay surface grabs the ball and slows it down just enough to give the returner a fighting chance, which makes getting an ace incredibly rare. And this isn't just about playing styles. It's about the physical beating the players take. Research shows that the peak pressure on the sole of a player's foot, the plantar pressure, is over 15% higher on a hard court than on clay when they make a sharp stop. Just try to imagine that extra shockwave jolting through your ankles, your knees, and your back thousands of times a match. And it's no surprise that over a long career, this leads to really specific patterns of injury. The unforgiving, rigid nature of hard courts is linked to more chronic joint issues, back, knee, and stress fractures. The sliding on clay can cause more muscle strains, like in the groin or ankle. And grass, which can get slippery and unpredictable, brings a higher risk of a sudden, acute injury from a bad fall. So we have these three totally distinct worlds, right? Each with its own demands, its own specialists. But lately, there's been a trend that might be, well, blurring the lines. You see, in an effort to make matches more consistently exciting, for TV audiences, a lot of tournaments have started to homogenize their surfaces. Wimbledon's grass has been engineered to play slower and bounce higher, while some other courts have been tweaked to play faster. The idea is to get longer, more dramatic rallies, no matter where they're playing. But there's a big potential downside to all this. As experts pointed out even years ago, this trend of making all the courts feel more similar could lead to a single dominant style of play, standing at the baseline and hitting big, becoming the only way to win. We risk losing the unique specialists, the serve and volley players on grass, the tireless defenders on clay. And that leaves us with a really fascinating and maybe a little worrying question for the future of the sport. In this big push to create a more universally appealing product, is tennis at risk of losing the very variety and texture that makes it so compelling? Are we watching these three distinct, fascinating worlds slowly flatten into just one? That's definitely something to think about the next time you turn on a match.